Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and this is Spooktober for Wednesday, October the 4th. Just trying to remember what today was, but yeah. But we have a story here. The Lonnie Zamora case. This is a huge case in terms of UFO history. You know, we have many sightings in the desert and scrublands. You know, your New Mexicos, your Arizonas, your Utahs, Colorados. That area of the country. So, yeah. You have all kinds of things going on. Arizona, you've had Skinwalker Ranch in the upper east end of the state, the Phoenix Lights case, and then, of course, in New Mexico, it's got an even bigger case. You know, probably the granddaddy that started it all. The crash at Roswell. That was a New Mexico case. Well, this is also a New Mexico case. So, yeah, let's get into this. It took place April 24th, 1864. We have Lonnie Zamora, who is just traveling as a policeman. Well, he's chasing down a speeding vehicle. And yeah, so he's a cop, he's chasing down a speeding vehicle. He looks to the side. And he sees fire and a ship. Now, this was approximately 5:45 p.m. Think about this. April, 5:45. So, the light's still good. You know, days have been getting to their longest point of the year. So, I mean, there's still plenty of light. You can see. So, it's not like something he saw in the dark. But, yeah. Now, this sighting was in Socorro, New Mexico. And Socorro's right here. It's almost midway in the state. Let's see. Roswell. Where is... No, not shows, not all this. We want to see maps, please. Back. Go away. Okay. So here is Roswell, New Mexico. And remember, here's Socorro. So they're not too far from each other in general. So yeah. But Socorro and Roswell was down here. So like I said, they're not all that far from one another. The actual Zamora case, though, it's cited as a huge one because, like we already stated, Zamora was a cop. He was in hot pursuit of a speeding driver, and he cites this thing, you know, out to the side. Um, so yeah, motor vehicle accident. Zamora advised the radio dispatcher that he would be checking the car down in Arroyo. Lopez received another radio call from Zamora asking Lopez to look out of the window to see if he could see an object. So he's chasing this speeding car, and he says he thinks he sees something, and he radios back, "Can you see anything?" When Lopez asked Zamora to describe it, Zamora said, "It looks like a balloon." And he requests the New Mexico State Police Sergeant Chavez to meet him at his location. When he arrives, he asks Zamora the trouble, and Zamora led him to examine some burning brush. So yeah. Now this is a artist impression of what they claimed the UFO looked like. He cited it as shiny, standing on four short legs. So yeah. Zamora claimed to have observed a shiny object that he initially believed to be an overturned car up on radiator or on trunk. The object was like aluminum. It was whitish against the mesa background, but not chrome, and shaped like the letter O. Zamora claimed to have briefly observed two people in white coveralls beside the object, who he later described as normal in shape, but possibly they were small adults or large kids. So, he's like, they look kind of humanish, but they weren't big people by any means. And he said the craft was whitish instead of metallic chrome-like. Zamora claims to hear a roar and see a blue and orange flame under the object, which then rose and moved away. So it actually had propellant to push it off the ground. And you remember he called in Chavez and showed him the burning brush. But yeah. Now, the case was examined by Project Blue Book, which, if you know anything about UFO history, is a project started, I think it's an Air Force project, but they wanted to record these cases, and they often actively sought ways to debunk them. or tried to give reasons. And, this is often where we'll hear the famous swamp gas or, balloon or, what else. But Zamora, being a police officer, was seen as a very credible witness. He had been not that far, close enough that the individuals who got out saw him. And that's where they supposedly got back in and left. So, yeah. But even Project Blue Book listed it as an unknown in its conclusion. They said, we don't know what to call it. Yeah. So, we've got some documents here. This is from the FBI. It's been uncovered by the Black Vault. I guess they've got it through FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act. But yeah, FOIA request number blah 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 UFO near Socorro. The enclosed 25 pages of records were determined to be responsive to your subject and were previously processed and released pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, FOIA. Please see the selected paragraphs below for relevant information specific to your request, as well as the enclosed FBI FOIA addendum for standard responses applicable to all requests. Now, Mr. Greenwald, blah, blah, blah. The addendum, explanation of exemptions. So they exempted part of the documents they had. But here's what they gave. FBI, Washington, D.C. on 3:06 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, deferred April the 27th, 1964. Director from Albuquerque. Unidentified flying object, UFO, Socorro, New Mexico, April 24, 64. Information concerning. Regarding Albuquerque telephone, I guess that's telephone, I'm not sure, 425. Last OSI Albuquerque advises incident not known to be connected with military or Operation Cloud Gap. An additional incident has been reported as happening at 1 a.m. 426 last at La Maderia, New Mexico, about 70 miles north of Santa Fe. Captain, name redacted, Española, New Mexico, advises he had interviewed only known witness, redacted, age redacted, and frightened of Santa Fe, New Mexico, redacted, was visiting his father, redacted, at La Madera, redacted, went out to tend some noisy horses at about 1 a.m. 426 last and noted located about 300 feet from horse something shaped like butane tank, possibly 12 to 14 feet high and as long as a telephone pole, apparently on the ground and surrounded with blue-white flame which appeared to come from portholes. He watched scene for about 1 minute. When flame went out, object was not noted to move, was silent at all times. Redacted went into house, told father, who laughed at him. New morning, he visited site, saw smoldering area. Later in day, saw a state police officer and related the incident to him. So apparently here in Santa Fe they saw something. Captain Redacted continued that he checked site at 7:34:26 last. Noted scorched circular area about 30 to 40 feet in diameter. He noted one rectangle V-shaped indentation in ground 8 by 12 inches and about 3 to 4 inches deep. Fellow officer who was there earlier pointed to places of 3 more indications the indentations were rectangular. So yeah, we're seeing proof here that someone else had a similar account. He goes out because, the horses were making noise. Like we said, this was around Santa Fe. They found indentations and they proclaimed the craft was similar to Zamora's recollection. So this isn't a one-time thing. He sees it lift off with flames. It leaves a burning circular area like with the Zamora case. So, yeah. It gets interesting. Captain Redacted further stated he saw several smooth circular prints on ground about 3 1/2 inches in diameter at site. No other witnesses known to have observed the object. Proper military authorities at Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque advised no investigations being conducted by FBI Albuquerque. Liaison, I think that's what it's supposed to be. Yeah, liaison being maintained. Military officers contacted advised the 2 incidents reported are not a part of military exercise to their knowledge and to date have no explanation. Bureau will be advised of any pertinent developments. End. This was 428.64. Now remember, Zamora case 424.64. So yeah, we're seeing not too far apart in time. When was this first one discovered? 427. So we've got two separate sightings. Zamora's the big one because, of course, he's considered a credible witness, being a police officer. They're supposed to be trained to record incidents, be mindful of them and everything. But yeah, 24th, 1964. Police officer described as sober, dependable, mature, and not known to engage in flights of fancy or fantasy, reported seeing a bluish or unidentified flying object and disappeared over a distant mountain. And it rise from the earth with a roar, emitting bluish and orange flames, and disappear over the distant mountain. When he reported his observations, representatives of the local law enforcement agencies searched the scene and noted 4 small, irregularly shaped, smoldering areas and 4 regular depressed areas at the scene. The UFO was described as oval-shaped, about 20 feet long, with a red insignia. There is no indication in the reference teletype that the Air Force had been advised. Our policy is not to investigate, but assure that Air Force is cognizant. Military is investigating, and Albuquerque office is maintaining liaison. So yeah. So we have descriptions of the 2 incidents. And again, as they stated in the beginning, they see Zamora as being a officer, very dependable, sober, mature, credible witness. And again, they are supposed to be trained to better describe scenes as they see them. So Zamora is given a lot of credit as the fact of being a law enforcement officer and seeing this event. Well, it turns out that the other witnesses, which I never knew there was a second witness to something so similar, 27th, where Zamora's was the 24th. It's interesting. The Albuquerque FBI urgent 425 to the director of the FBI. UFO Socorro, New Mexico, April 24, 64. Information concerning. Information received April 24th and 25 from Lonnie Zamora, considered sober, dependable, mature, not, what we just read. That was about 25 feet. While in the south area of Socorro, noted flame in sky to southwest, which he decided to check out in belief dynamite shack in area had blown up. While traveling in isolated area approximately 1 mile south area of Socorro, noted in depression about 800 feet away. So it's over this hill. So it's down behind probably your mesas and mountains and stuff. So whitish object, which upon glancing at same appeared to be overturned automobile. Two persons in apparent white coveralls were adjacent to the object. So he's kind of suggesting it also looks like an overturned automobile. Then traveled over rough road to spot about 103 feet from object and about 20 to 25 feet higher. No persons visible. Heard 2 or 3 loud thumps like somebody getting into a vehicle less than a second apart. When then, with a roar and a bluish and orange flames, object slowly vertically rose to about car height. Then noise and flame stopped, but the object was still in the sky. It took off at high speed in straight line at almost horizontally to disappear over distant mountain. So, this is what Zamora said to have saw. Now, there is so much Socorro. Yeah, we've got information from Visit Socorro, CNET. You know, they do a investigation into, they call it New Mexico's less famous UFO landing, because we already talked about, yeah, they're also the home of the Roswell crash. But yeah, from the CIA, how to investigate a flying saucer. They discuss the Zamora case. Establish a group to investigate and evaluate the sighting. Determine the objectives of your investigation. Consult with experts. Create a reporting system to organize incoming cases. Eliminate false positives. So yeah, that's what I think Project Blue Book did wrong. It just tried to offer, said it was this, which often people knew it wasn't. They would tell balloonists that it was a balloon. So yeah, no. And this one, they said unknown. They didn't know what else to call it. Develop methodology to identify common aircraft and other aerial phenomenon often mistaken for UFOs. Now, this, as we have stated, was a not cylindrical, but ovally round object. And to my knowledge, we don't have any planes, jets that look like that. We've got, someone may suggest maybe it was a hard shell Zeppelin. But again, he doesn't really suggest it. It doesn't suggest that because he sees the flames coming out the bottom. You really couldn't suggest it was a Zeppelin either. So, examine witness documentation. Conduct controlled experiments. How many did they actually conduct? You got a question. Gather and test physical and forensic evidence. Discourage false reporting. But yeah. They talk a lot about the Zamora case in this particular article. So, and then this is from a local CBS affiliate. Las Cruces, New Mexico. Yeah. They talk about the Zamora incident. Oh, goodness. Excuse me. So, yeah. And then, of course, I've got the Wikipedia article here. But the Zamora case is an interesting one. It's a sighting of some kind of craft. There appears to have been individuals sighted as well. And now that we know there was a second sighting that saw something similar, both of them seem very similar in their descriptions, though we must stay cautious because we don't know if it was reported copying the Zamora case or if it was a true incident. Because I think, like we said, 427.64, and I think the Zamora case was 424. So there's a 3-day gap. Now, news travels slower. It is true. But the potentiality of the story to have traveled from the late evening of that day to the the morning of the next day could have happened. You know, it's not like you have to go by horseback to relate all stories. There's still newspapers. Not everybody had a television, but it was around, black and white. So it's hard to say. That's not to say it wasn't, but again, we don't know if it also was just something fabricated because they saw, or maybe it was influenced by the Zamora case. But, nevertheless, it is listed as a potential second sighting. But the Zamora sighting is the big one. we want to look at. But yeah, um, what did Officer Lonnie Zamora see? He gives his description as the best to what he could describe it in recollection. But yeah, all this started from a car chase. So, yeah. Zamora himself would die 2009. So again, it may feel like it's been forever ago, but yeah, this was only 16 years before I was born. It's it's an interesting case. Now again, we have other cases that in UFO history that sometimes are even more fascinating, but this is one of those cases you have a witness you would list as highly credible. There's no abductions that, happen, no unusual events. It's just he sees what he first thinks is a crashed vehicle. He sees it out the side of his vehicle, so he ends up going up to look over, and he spots this craft on the ground with two individuals. Now again, all he can say is they're either large kids or smaller adults. So we're looking at probably around 5 foot in height. And white coveralls, so some kind of white clothing. But that's all we really know. There's also this insignia, which this is supposed to be described as to how it looked. You have the line, the arrow going up, and then the little oval. After it takes all off, you see burning brush in a circular formation. It is an interesting case. But we just wanted to talk about this because it is one that even mystified Project Blue Book, because, yeah, it's one of the few unknowns. They tried to list something they believed everything was, but yeah, even they were like, we don't know. But yeah. that will be the end of this episode. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting links in the description below the video. But, thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.